Bob Vila. Welcome home again to our urban farmhouse here in Medford, Massachusetts. Today we're reframing the front of the house so that we can move the front door over to the side. We'll be taking you on a tour of the Royall House, a beautiful colonial from the 1730s. And also we'll be talking kitchen design and lighting design. Stick around, it's good to have you home again. Simple old houses like this very often have a front door that opens right directly into the living room. And when you have that, obviously half of the year with cold weather, it's impossible to keep the cold draft out. So one of the architect's solutions here is to move this doorway over to the side and frame in a proper foyer. Let's go in. Now this original door has already been, the plaster's already been stripped around here. You can see how it was very simply framed. There's barely a header here. It's just a 2x4 on the flat. And what we've got to do right now is cut out this section over here. Now this is Matt Alexander, who's been making the cuts just with a regular circular saw. Matt, this is a balloon frame situation, right?
Right. That means the studs go all the way from the bottom plate or sill all the way up past the first floor, essentially, and then the second floor is hung off of them.
Exactly.
That makes a difference to us because we can't get a king stud in the same way that they did it when they originally framed the house.
Right.
So we're going to put our header from this king stud all the way to the outside wall king stud.
Right.
And that way, all we have to do is put in some jack studs where we want the door to be.
Right, and Charlie Tomaszewski's here. Charlie, I think there was a window here at one point, right?
Yes, at one time, probably about 50 years or so ago, they did a renovation and they had a window here. And we were about to just take that out to get our new door in.
All right, so the next step is, since these are full dimensional studs, you've made the first cut with a circular saw and now you're ready to cut through the rest of it with a reciprocating saw, right?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead. All right, so the new header is actually two 2x10s. They're sandwiched on a regular piece of 1-inch or 3/4 inch stock, and this gives you the full dimension of the studs that were there. Now the weight of the upper area that was being carried by those studs is being transferred via the header to this stud and to the corner. And so we can remove what's underneath it, but first you want to cut out any nails between the sheathing and the studs. It's interesting that the original siding on this house, beautiful cedar clapboards, was covered over first by a layer of cedar shingles and then by some man-made shingles later on. And these were just added in here kind of when they patched things up and removed the window. How are those studs coming out?
Yeah, we're getting there. Popping right out.
So now we're putting up new jack studs to support the header for the door. We just tack them in place and then check for plumb. Now we can nail this jack stud and add another on the other side. With the new header and jack studs tacked in position, we can nail the sheathing to the new studs from the outside. Then we'll be ready to cut the sheathing to create the new opening. We've marked off the edge of our jack studs on the outside, on the sheathing, and snapped a line to guide our cut. Once we remove all of the sheathing, we'll be ready to move the door frame into its new location. Okay, so the door will temporarily stay over there. Noisy. There we go. The existing frame goes in over here, and the door will go right back in. Next, we'll tour the Royall House, a beautiful 1730s colonial in historic Medford, Massachusetts. We're visiting the Royall House in historic Medford, Massachusetts, named after Isaac Royall, a Crown loyalist and very wealthy man in the 1700s, probably the paragon of the triangular trade. He's a man who made a fortune in Antigua and in Boston, trading in slaves, in rum, in sugar. And one of his great hopes was to have the most pretentious and ambitious house in all of the Boston area, and this is it, a classic example of American Georgian architecture. The interesting thing is that it was actually a remodeling. There was an earlier house here built by the famous Governor Winthrop in the 1630s, and over that shell Mr. Isaac Royall created this exciting example of Georgian architecture. And what we're looking at here is actually the river facade. Most of these houses presented two very important facades, one for people arriving by water on the river, on the Mystic, and the other for people arriving by coach on the other side. Now, the interesting thing about this facade is that it really does represent exactly the kind of architecture that was being built in London in the 1730s. And in fact, Royall had design books shipped directly to his brother who was overseeing the construction here, so that the details, not just the coin courses that you see on either corner, but the details of the windows, the way they're arranged one on top of the other, the door. This house reeks of Palladianism. If we go to the other facade, the west facade originally faced a long alley of trees and a road that brought coaches to a cobbled circle right in front of this facade. And what's interesting about this facade is that it's wood, but it's a wood that's made to look like an ashlar, like a stone siding. And in these cases, the stonework was meant to really elicit that formal architecture of English city houses. This is the original 1730s siding on this house, and one reason that it survived for over 2 centuries is that it was applied over furring strips, so there's ventilation behind it. Now, look at the scale of this house. The windows are large at the bottom, they get a little bit smaller in the middle, and they're quite small at the top. The stones, in fact, when you look at them on the base, are a good 10 or 12 inches in height, but they recede as you go up, and they get to be just about 6 inches at the top. But of course, the whole thing is framed by these monumental pilasters on either side, and kind of the crown of the facade is this beautiful little Palladian door with the arched pediment over it. It's altogether an incredibly successful job. Let's go around to the south facade and meet Peter Gittleman, who's the president of the Royall House Association, and learn a little bit about the remains of the house that Governor Winthrop had originally built in the 1600s. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Bob.
So tell us a bit about the remodeling story here. This originally was a 1630s house.
It was, and in fact, you can see the original outline of it if you follow the chimney down and to the sides. Here, if you look at this picture, you can see where it says here in dark, you can really get a sense of what the original house was.
So that was all added on to create the Georgian mansion.
It was, and in fact, Winthrop's house is still in there, very well concealed, but
Neat.
tucked right in there.
So what happened to Isaac Royall after the Revolution?
Well, Isaac Royall, during the Revolution, during the eve of the Revolution, went off to church in King's Chapel, and what he ended up doing was finding when he was coming back to Medford, his house was within enemy lines, and he was told that he could not return to his property here. So he spent a little time in Boston, and then as a loyalist had no choice but to go back to England, where he died in 1781.
Loyal to the end.
Loyal
And
to
I'm
the
told
end.
Washington, in fact, was headquartered here at one point, right?
Washington did not sleep here, but he did spend time here.
Can we start the tour inside?
Certainly.
Oh, it's beautiful. But the scale is smaller than I would have expected.
It is. In fact, you have to remember that the original Winthrop house is still right inside here.
Yeah, and that dictated the scale of the enlarged house.
Exactly.
It's maybe 6 or 7 feet wide and not more than 7 feet high or thereabouts.
But happily, Royal made it up in the wonderful carvings. And if you look at some of the carvings that are right at eye level, you can see the visitors to this house really would have been impressed when they came in.
Acanthus leaves on the bracket and a paneled arch and a beautiful keystone carved with flowers. That's very, very pretty. And of course, the staircase is classical with the baluster and the newel post and the beautiful turned balusters. So where shall we start?
Let's go into the best parlor.
Great. So this is called the best parlor, and indeed it's got beautiful detailing. Now, is this Royal over the mantel?
This is Isaac Royall Jr. when he inherited the house at about the age of 22. Very young man. He had a sister, he had a wife, and a young child at that point already.
And the detailing in this room, like the pilasters, the fluted pilasters on either side, and the arch, which is similar to the arch outside, and identical carvings. This is all original,
It all
right?
survives from 1737.
Amazing. And it's not even covered with a million layers of paint. Now, to what do we attribute the survival of this house?
Well, the house has been recognized since the 19th century as a real relic of colonial life, and it's such a grand example that it simply was, it survived.
It's always been respected.
And this room particularly, because in fact the carvings were so rich that nobody ever decided to remove them and Victorianize.
So in other parts of the house, they did remodel and Victorianize. And
Indeed.
Stuff. Yeah. And the furnishings, are any of them original to the Royals?
Well, when Royal was forced to flee the country in 1775, his estate was confiscated, and what ended up happening is that the furniture was sold off. So when the Royal House Association acquired this property, it had nothing in it. And over the years, friends, members of the Daughters of the American Revolution helped us furnish this house.
Yeah. Nice pieces. This is actually a gate leg, Queen Anne gate leg table, a little tea table. Who knows how old. Well, can we take a look at one of the upstairs rooms?
Let's go up to the marble chamber.
The marble chamber. So it's about the same size as the one below. Why is it called a marble chamber? Because of the work here?
Exactly, because this set of pilasters right over here have always been marbleized.
This looks restored, though.
It is, in fact. There were some scrapings done sometime in the mid-century, and that was exactly what this was based on, this pattern of marbleizing.
Very rich room with all this red damask.
It is, in fact, it was the most valuable room on the 1739 inventory of Isaac Royall Sr. when he died, and in fact, the bed and all the crimson damask hangings were valued at £200, which was quite a lot of money.
Now, this is not the real bed. This is another antique bed.
That's
but
exactly right.
It simulates what was in the room.
We've set this house up as stage sets to give people the sense of what it
This
looks
is
like.
mighty fine desk you've put in here.
This
What can you
is.
tell us about this?
Well, we believe it's a Boston piece, and it's exactly what Isaac Royall would have had in this house.
Can we open it?
Sure. It's the kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
quality and workmanship that he would have really appreciated.
And it's of the period, early 1700s.
1760s, exactly.
And they often did that. Neat. Thanks for the tour, Peter.
My pleasure, Bob.
When we come back, we'll work on the kitchen layout with the homeowner and our cabinet consultant. And this will be the last of the joist hangers. And there's nothing like a little palm driver, a little palm nailer like that to make short work Nice job, Charlie. So now what we've got is pretty much a completed new restructuring of this whole area of the house. We've said goodbye to the 19th century plan here where you had little rooms and little nooks and crannies and walls supporting the upstairs, and recreated the entire structure so that it's kind of free, and we've got what is basically a whole 35-foot span of the house wide open. And you can follow it in terms of wherever you see new LVLs, new structural lumber, this triple one here. There used to be a wall carrying the upstairs in this location, and then the big 18-inch one that's over here, which is carrying the outside wall of the house. But boy, does this make a difference. But now let's talk with Faith Allen from Merillat Cabinets, and of course Julie Graham, our homeowner, who is, I guess, getting involved in the fun part of the redesign here, right, Julie?
Oh, this is the fun part.
Yeah. Now, the design of the kitchen space is something that, you know, a lot of people end up making a lot of mistakes early on. And what are the basic points that you want to look at first?
Well, what we want to take a look at whenever we start to design the space is something that we've come up with, Merillat's come up with, called ergonomics. It's kind of a unique way to look at
Organomics.
Ergonomics. It's a blending of organization and ergonomics.
I see.
It allows you to take a look at the space beforehand and divide it up into activity-based zones. So taking a look at what we wanted to do here in this space, we have a storage zone right here.
Let me orient this, even though the handwriting is
Right.
upside down. We
Yeah.
have a storage zone, you were saying.
Yep, the storage zone, we would have a pantry, utility cabinet, refrigerator,
Right.
so we'd have all hot, cold storage over here.
Yeah.
A sink zone, which would be mostly for cleanup area. Cooking zone, where the range would be. Food prep zone and a planning zone, so you could make good use of the island. And then an eating zone over here in the nook, so that that would be a little bit separated from the rest of the kitchen.
So these are all kind of the functions or destinations that you have to think about at the beginning before you start ordering kitchen cabinets. And
Right.
so we're kind of standing where that island's going to be, right?
Right, yes.
And then what happens on this big blank wall over here?
Well, I think what we're going to do over here is, Julie said that she wants to have a lot of glass storage here.
This has got to be a good 9-foot height.
Right.
Can you
Right.
fill all of that up with cabinets?
Oh yeah, no problem. We can fill it from top to bottom, and I think we're going to have all glass because you
Julie,
have a
what
lot
would
of
you
stuff
do with
want
that
to display.
much display area?
Well, I think it'll be a combination of dishes. There will be some objects for display, pottery, things like that. So it'll be a combination of both utility and interesting objects.
Right, display. No, that'll be very nice though. And of course lighting it will be a challenge,
That's
but
a
we'll get to that
challenge, yeah.
later. And then in the space behind me is where we would have the guts of the area, which is really the stove, right?
Right, right. Yeah, we're going to have a 48-inch stove here, right?
Right.
And so we'll have a lot of cooking area. We'll put pots and pans over here. Julie and her partner like to cook and entertain. So we'll make all the utensils and pots and pans that they're going to need handy so that they'll have easy access to them.
No, it's a party area. Careful you don't fall through here. And then in this corner of the space is all pantry, because this door gets framed in.
Right, that gets framed in. We're going to put a window right there.
Yep.
And then we're going to have the pantry right here, which could be shelving or it could be cabinets. We really haven't decided
Well,
yet
that's
what
the
we're gonna
larder for boxes and cans and the
Right,
like.
for baked goods. We're going to have a utility cabinet
Where's the fridge go?
The refrigerator will go right next to the utility cabinet.
Okay,
so it'll be
utility
about
cabinet,
right here.
refrigerator,
Right.
and then we get into my least favorite area, which is cleanup and the
cleanup, that's
dishwasher.
right, yeah.
Right. And then we wrap up with the nook area, which is an original part of the kitchen, and we are going to reuse the benches and the table that were
We are.
here, right?
We are. We're going to just put them right back in as they were.
It's quite a plan, ladies. Thank you. Lots of information on kitchen remodeling and design is available at bobvila.com. Okay, and the door has found its new home, but we're out of time. Come home again next week when we'll be installing Pella windows and a beautiful set of French doors. Also, we'll be restructuring the barn and making lots of progress on the second floor. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again. For lots of information and resources for your home improvement project, check out my website at bobvila.com.